Hello, this is Mr. Stansbury. I'm going to take you through the notes on completing the square to find the center and radius of a circle. All right, so at the end of this, you should be able to say I can complete the square to write the equation of a circle in the form x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared, which is what we learned about in our previous lesson. You should also be able to say I can find the center and radius of a circle given its equation. All right, so first thing we're going to do is I'm going to take you through all the steps on completing the square. So to complete the square, here's what we start with. X squared plus 10x plus 9 equals 0. So what we're going to do is we're going to make one side of this equation here a perfect square, and that's what's going to help us put it into this form here. All right, so first step to complete the square is to isolate the constant. Isolate means to get all by itself. So the constant in this case here is the one that without a variable on it, and that's 9. So we're going to move this 9 to the other side. So subtract 9 from both sides, and we get x squared plus 10x equals negative 9. Second step, find half of the x term. So half of 10 is 5. So 10 divided by 2 is 5. Okay, and then we're going to take that number there and we're going to square that number. So we take the 5 and we square it to give us 25. And then step 4 is we are going to add that 25 to both sides of this equation right here. So this equation here got moved right down to here, and we're going to now add 25 to the left side and add 25 to the right side. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to write this left side over here as a perfect square. Okay, and then negative 9 plus 25 is 16. What we do here to write this as a perfect square, what will always work, is we're going to take, I got to find a color I haven't used yet, which is just about all of them. Let's do this. We'll do it in red. So we take this 5 right here, and this 5 is always going to be this number right here. If this was negative 10 divided by 2, that'd be negative 5, and this would be x minus 5. Okay, but this 5 will always go in there when we're writing as a perfect square. That half of that x term will always be right here on the perfect square. So it'll be x plus 5 squared. Just to kind of help you out with this is if we take x plus 5 and we square it. So we do x plus 5 times x plus 5. 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times x is 5x. X times 5 is 5x, and x times x is x squared. When we add that all together, we get x squared plus 10x plus 25. And if you'll notice, that's exactly what we have right here. So this is the same thing as that, just written in a different form, written as a perfect square. Okay? Okay. Now, there's another way we can do this. I call it the square technique. Okay, so we can do it this way. This is completing the square, and this works just fine. Okay, the other way to do this is, again, like I just said, the square technique. So what you're going to do is we have x squared plus 10x plus 9 equals 0, and we're going to do the same first step, isolate the constant. Okay, and then we're going to still do the same second step, find half the x term, which is 5. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take this 5 and we're going to put it here and here. Okay, so whatever half that x term is going to go here. If this is a negative 10, this would be negative 5 and negative 5. And then this x squared here, we're going to split it up and to go x times x. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're just going to multiply whatever we have. So x times x is going to give us x squared. Okay, 5 times x gives us 5x. X times 5 is 5x, and 5 times 5 is 25. Okay? And then that there, this 25, whatever ends up down in this bottom corner here, is going to be the piece that we're going to add to both sides. Okay? And then this also, the nice part about this is this also shows us what our perfect square is going to be. It's going to be this 5x that goes there, right there. Okay? And then, well, there's our x plus 5, and there's our x plus 5. I'm going to take our negative 9 that we had from way up here and add the 25 to it to get 16. We end up with the same thing over here. I find this a little bit easier, but if this makes more sense to you, then by all means, you go right ahead and do that. Okay? I'm going to take a look at some examples here to help cement this in. So here's our example. Complete the square and write it in this form. Okay, so to complete our square here, okay, if you'll notice on here, we have this y squared here, which is a little, that's the piece that we're not used to seeing. We didn't see that in the one before that. So what we're going to do, let's just kind of hang on to this thing for later, okay? So we're just going to just do completing the square with this here. So the first thing we did, we isolated the constant. We got the 3's already over there, so we didn't have to do step 1. Now we're going to find half the x term. So we take negative 2 divided by 2, and that gives us negative 1. I'm going to circle that because we're going to use that later on for writing as a perfect square. Okay, we've taken half the x term. Now we're going to square this negative 1. So negative 1 squared, negative 1 times negative 1 gives us positive 1. Okay, we're going to now add that to both sides. So we still have x squared minus 2x, and then equals 3. We're going to just kind of, remember, we're tucking this y squared away for later. Y squared. We'll put that back in later on just so it doesn't confuse us. Okay, so we're going to add this 1 plus 1 to both sides. So that's where this 1 is going. Whatever we add to one side, we have to add the other side. Okay, and now we can write this here on the left side. We've now made that into a perfect square. 3 plus 1 is 4. This over here is going to be always going to be x, and then remember, it's this number here, half of the x term, this negative 1 is always going to go there. Okay, so there's our excuse me, x minus 1 squared equals 4. Now we're just going to take this y squared and tuck it back in where it started. So we're going to have x minus 1 squared plus y squared equals 4. Okay, so now it says complete the square and write it in that form we just did. So we are all done. The nice thing about this is this is the equation of a circle. So it didn't ask us, but we're just gonna do it anyway, just to help you understand what's going on here. So the center of our circle, center of circle, is going to be, remember, the opposite of negative 1 is positive 1, and then there is no y, so it's really y plus 0. Right? Opposite of 0 is negative 0, so there is no negative 0, so it's just 1, 0. So the center of our circle is going to be at 1, 0, and then the radius is going to be the square root of 4. So the radius is going to be 2. So we've got the center of our circle. Again, they're not asking us to do this, but just so you can kind of understand what's going on. Here's the center of our circle, 1, 0, and then the radius is going to be 2. So basically this is kind of what this here is going to be. That's the equation of this circle right here. Okay? Okay, one more to do. But first, let's take a little comedy break here. All right. Okay, so here, oops, wrong one. Here we go. Hold on a second here. Here we go. Find the center and radius of the circle. Okay, so here's what we've got. So now we've got this whole completing the square business that we want to do here. Okay? Okay, so really what we're going to do is we're going to kind of complete the square for the x and for the y. Okay, so first step on this is to isolate the constant. It's already by itself. This step is already taken care of for us. Now we're going to find half the x term and also the y term as well. So we take negative 8 divided by 2, and that gives us negative 4. Let's do y in pink here. So we take half of negative 14 and divide it by 2, and that is negative 7. Okay? So we found half of the x and the y term, and now we're going to square both of these things, okay? So we take negative 4 squared, and that gives us 16, and then we take negative 7 squared, and that gives us 49. Okay, we're going to add both the 16 and the 49 to both sides. Okay, so here's where hopefully it'll start making a little bit of sense as to what we're doing. So we got x squared minus 8x plus 16, right? There's the 16 from the original. Let's see, I'm sorry, from this square right here. So here's our equals. We already had 16 over here from this original 16, just moved it down. So now we added 16 here to this side. This is what we started with there. So we added 16 to this side, so we got to add 16 to this side as well. And then with the y, this is what we started with, y squared minus 14. So we have y squared minus 14x, and then we are going to add 49 to both sides as well. Okay, so I know this looks like a big mess, but excuse me, it's going to hopefully look less messy and make more sense here in a second. So this now here is a perfect squared, and it's going to be x, and remember, it's always whatever this number is here. That's key, x minus 4 squared. And then for the y, we're going to have y, and then let's see, here's our half of our y term, so at y minus 7 squared, right? We're going to add those together, and that's going to equal this whole thing all added together. So let's see, that's 32 and 49 gives us what, 81. Okay, so find the center and radius of the circle. So center is going to be at 4 and 7, and then the radius is going to equal the square root of 81, which is 9. So there's our center, 4, 7, and the radius is 9. Okay? Okay. I'm just going to cruise through this one really quick just to give you another example, but really it's the same thing that we just did. Okay, I'm going to try to go a little quicker on this one so that we're not spending so much time. All right, so 4 is already by itself, so we're going to take 6 and divide it by 2. That gives us our 3. And then for the for the y, we've got negative 12 divided by 2, and that's negative 6. Okay, so now we're going to take that 3 and square it. So 3 squared is 9. And then we're going to take this negative 6. Oops. I take the negative 6 and square it, and that gives us 36. So we're going to add that 36 and that 9 to both sides of the equation, right? So now we have really x squared plus 6x plus 9. And then for the y, we have y squared minus 12y plus 36. And this whole thing here is going to equal, I'm going to do this in white a little bit better, equals, it's going to equal 4 plus 9 plus 36, right? Because this 9 and this 36 have to go over here as well. And then this 4 comes down from there. That's where all those numbers come from, right? So we end up having over here, this as a perfect square is x plus 3 squared. This one here is y minus 6 squared, right? And we're adding those together, and that's going to equal what this adds up all together. 36 and 4 is 40. That's 49, right? So then now that means the center is that opposite of 3 is negative 3. Opposite of negative 6 is positive 6. And then the radius is the square root of 49, which is 7. So the center is at negative 3, 6, and the radius is 7. Okay? If you have any further questions on this, please feel free to ask. Thanks.